Long before Barkerville existed, British Columbia was already sitting on a fault line of ambition, rumor, and global movement. The story of this town does not begin with a single man or a single creek, but with a buildup of pressure that had been quietly forming for years. In the late 1850s, the Fraser River Gold Rush sent shockwaves far beyond the Pacific coast. News of gold discovered along the lower Fraser in 1858 spread rapidly through California, Australia, Britain, and eastern North America. Thousands of miners, many of them veterans of earlier rushes, poured into what was then the colony of British Columbia. Overnight, the region shifted from a remote outpost dominated by the fur trade into a place of global economic interest. When the easily accessible gold along the Fraser began to thin, prospectors did what they had always done. They pushed farther. Their attention turned north, toward the rugged interior known as the Cariboo. This was not empty land. It was, and remains, the traditional territory of indigenous peoples, including the Takodene, Secwepemc, and Decay, whose deep knowledge of rivers, seasonal movement, and terrain shaped the region long before European arrival. Prospectors often followed existing indigenous routes, even if they rarely acknowledged the source of that knowledge. Reaching the Cariboo was an ordeal. Some arrived by ship to the coast, then traveled inland on foot or horseback. Others, known as the overlanders, crossed the continent from eastern Canada, enduring months of exposure, starvation, and uncertainty. Many never made it. Those who did entered a landscape defined by dense forests, steep valleys, and long winters, a place entirely unsuited to sudden mass migration. The first gold discoveries in the Cariboo did not immediately produce legends. In 1859, traces of gold were found along the Horsefly River. In 1860 and 1861, additional strikes occurred on creeks like Keithley and Antler. These finds were encouraging but modest, enough to draw experienced prospectors deeper into the interior, but not enough to spark a full-scale rush. That changed when gold was discovered along a narrow waterway called Williams Creek. The early settlement near the creek was known as Richfield, a rough camp made up of tents, log structures, and hastily built saloons. It existed for one reason, and one reason only: gold. Supplies were scarce, prices were inflated, and law was minimal. Still, Richfield proved that the Cariboo held real potential. Gold was there, and where gold existed, larger forces soon followed. By the early 1860s, the Cariboo had become the focal point of British Columbia's economic future. Colonial authorities understood what was at stake. If the gold could be controlled, taxed, and transported, it could determine the fate of the colony itself. The stage was set. The pressure had built. All that remained was a single discovery, powerful enough to ignite everything at once. That discovery would come not upstream, where everyone expected it, but downstream, in a place most miners had already dismissed. And that is where the story truly begins. By the summer of 1862, Williams Creek was already crowded with ambition. Claims upstream from Richfield were tightly packed, worked hard by miners convinced that the best gold had already been found. Most believed the lower stretches of the creek were worthless, scoured clean by water and time. One man disagreed. William Billy Barker was not the typical image of a gold rush hero. He was an English sailor by trade, older than most of the men around him, and far from wealthy. Barker had chased gold before in California with little success. By the time he arrived in the Cariboo, he carried more experience than optimism. What he did have was patience, and a willingness to ignore the crowd. While others worked shallow claims upstream, Barker and his partners staked a claim farther down Williams Creek, in ground widely dismissed as exhausted. Their method was slow and physically punishing. Instead of skimming gravel, they dug deep, sinking a shaft straight down through layers of sediment, fighting water the entire way. Nearby miners mocked the effort, convinced Barker was wasting time and money. Then, in late summer of 1862, At a depth of roughly 50 feet, everything changed. Barker's crew struck a rich layer of gold-bearing gravel. Within days, they recovered an extraordinary amount of gold, dozens of ounces in a matter of hours. The scale of the find was undeniable. Word spread with astonishing speed, carried by miners, packers, and merchants, racing to stake their own claims before it was too late. What followed was one of the most explosive population surges in Canadian history. The settlement near Barker's claim expanded almost overnight, transforming from scattered camps into a dense town that took his name, Barkerville. Within months, the population surged into the thousands. At its height, Barkerville became the largest city in British Columbia and one of the largest urban centers in all of Western North America, north of San Francisco. This was not a crude frontier outpost. Barkerville quickly developed the features of a permanent city. There were hotels, boarding houses, general stores, bakeries, blacksmiths, and professional offices. The town supported theaters, organized fraternal lodges, and published its own newspaper, the Caribou Sentinel, which documented everything from mining disputes to social events. Perhaps most remarkable was the town's diversity. Barkerville drew people from across the British Empire, the United States, and beyond. A large Chinese population arrived during the rush, forming one of the earliest and most significant Chinese communities in Canada. Chinese miners worked claims abandoned by others and played a central role in the town's economy, operating businesses that provided essential services in an isolated and demanding environment. Barkerville's wealth posed a logistical challenge. The town sat deep in the interior, separated from the coast by mountains, rivers, and canyons. To secure control over the gold and stabilize the region, colonial authorities invested in a massive infrastructure project, the Caribou Wagon Road. Carved through cliffs and river gorges, the road connected Barkerville to the coast, allowing supplies, people, and gold to move with unprecedented efficiency. It bound the town to the future of the colony itself. By the mid-1860s, Barkerville stood at the center of British Columbia's economic universe, a city built on mud, timber, and ambition. But its rapid rise came with a hidden cost. The same speed and improvisation that allowed Barkerville to flourish also made it dangerously fragile. And that fragility was about to be tested. By the late 1860s, Barkerville had reached a level of prosperity few frontier towns ever achieved. Gold continued to flow from Williams Creek, businesses thrived, and the town's future appeared secure. But beneath that success was a dangerous reality. Barkerville had been built fast, cheaply, and almost entirely out of wood. The buildings stood close together along a narrow main street. Roofs were covered in wooden shingles, stovepipes ran through thin walls, open flames were everywhere. In kitchens, workshops, and saloons. And water was limited. Fire was not a question of if, but when. That moment came in the early morning hours of September the 16th, 1868. The exact cause was never conclusively determined, though contemporary accounts point to an accident involving a stovepipe near one of the town's hotels or saloons. What is known is how quickly the fire spread. Fanned by dry conditions and strong winds, flames raced through Barkerville with terrifying speed. Buildings ignited one after another, sending sparks across rooftops and down the length of the street. The town's fire brigade was helpless. Buckets, hand pumps, and sheer determination were no match for a blaze of that scale. Residents fled into the surrounding hills, watching as the heart of the Caribou Gold Rush burned. By the time the fire burned itself out, Barkerville lay in ruins. More than 100 buildings were destroyed in a matter of hours. Businesses, homes, hotels, and government offices were reduced to ash. The town that had risen in less than a decade appeared to have been erased in a single day. For most gold rush settlements, this would have marked the end, a final chapter written in smoke. But Barkerville responded in a way that stunned even its own residents. Almost immediately, plans were made to rebuild. Gold was still being pulled from the creek, and the town's economic importance had not vanished with its buildings. merchants salvaged what they could. Carpenters, masons, and laborers went to work before the ground had even cooled. In a remarkable act of collective determination, Barkerville was reconstructed in just over a month. Nearly 90 new buildings rose from the ashes in roughly 6 weeks. This time, lessons had been learned. The main street was widened to slow the spread of future fires. Some buildings incorporated brick and metal where possible. The layout was improved, not just restored. The rebuilt Barkerville was stronger, more deliberate, and more confident than before. The fire that should have destroyed the town instead became a defining moment, proof that Barkerville was not merely a temporary camp, but a place worth fighting for. Yet, survival through disaster did not guarantee long-term security. The flames had tested Barkerville's physical structure. What lay ahead would test something far more fragile, the town's social balance and economic foundation. And those challenges would unfold slowly, quietly, and relentlessly. With the rebuilt town standing proudly along Williams Creek, Barkerville entered a new phase, one defined not by fire or sudden fortune, but by social and economic evolution. The gold that had fueled its rise was no longer abundant in easily accessible quantities. Prospectors who once thrived on shallow placer claims now faced diminishing returns. The easy riches of the early 1860s were gone, replaced by the more laborious and expensive methods of industrial mining. This shift transformed the town's population. Many transient miners left for new strikes elsewhere, leaving behind a smaller, more stable community. Those who stayed were often families, merchants, or skilled workers whose livelihoods were tied to the infrastructure and services that supported the mines. Barkerville was no longer just a boomtown. It was a town attempting to endure through adaptation. At the same time, the social structure of the town revealed its underlying tensions. Barkerville had always been multicultural, but wealth and opportunity were unevenly distributed. The Chinese community, which had become essential to the town's economy, faced systemic discrimination. They were frequently assigned less desirable mining claims, and their businesses, while vital, often operated under legal and social limitations. Despite these challenges, the Chinese residents built a strong, resilient society. Benevolent associations like the Qikong Tong provided support, settling disputes, hosting cultural events, and serving as the backbone of community cohesion. Their presence would leave an enduring mark on Barkerville's history. Meanwhile, the technology of mining itself was changing. Hydraulic mining, which used high-pressure water to wash away entire sections of hillside, became a common practice. These operations required significant capital and fewer workers, shifting the economic focus from individual miners to larger companies. Equipment such as sluice boxes, sluice dams, and water channels dominated the landscape, and the once crowded main street of prospectors gave way to a quieter town that relied on industrial efficiency rather than individual effort. Education, governance, and infrastructure also evolved during this period. Schools were established for the children of permanent residents, local government offices maintained administrative control, and the Caribou Wagon Road continued to connect Barkerville to the coast. Although the population had dwindled from its peak, the town's institutions helped maintain its relevance and stability. It was a community defined less by rapid growth and more by survival, adaptation, and cohesion. By the turn of the century, Barkerville had shifted from a chaotic gold rush settlement to a quieter, organized town that balanced its past glories with the realities of a dwindling resource. It became a place where memories of fortune and adventure mingled with the daily routines of families and tradespeople. The town's character had changed, but its spirit remained. Determined, resilient, and intimately tied to the gold that first brought it into existence. Yet even as Barkerville settled into this quieter life, a third challenge loomed: the threat of being forgotten entirely. Buildings decayed, populations continued to shrink, and the town risked fading into history unless someone intervened to preserve its remarkable story. The next chapter would be defined not by gold or fire, but by the vision of those who saw value in memory itself. By the 1940s, Barkerville had become a shadow of its former self. The gold had long since dwindled, and most miners and merchants had moved on to more promising regions. Only a handful of residents remained, holding on to a town slowly succumbing to decay. Buildings that had survived the fire and subsequent reconstruction began to deteriorate. Roofs sagged, boards rotted, and the forest began reclaiming streets once bustling with life. The town faced its most insidious threat yet, being erased from memory entirely. During this period, many of Barkerville's structures were stripped for materials, while others collapsed from neglect. Unlike earlier disasters, there was no immediate crisis to galvanize rebuilding. Instead, the passage of time quietly threatened to end the town's story. For a place that had once been the economic heart of the Cariboo, it seemed destined to fade into obscurity. But just as Barkerville seemed on the brink of permanent loss, a new kind of prospector arrived, one motivated not by gold, but by history. Individuals such as Fred Luddett, a dedicated local historian, and Ted Barnes, a hotelier with a passion for heritage, recognized the cultural and historical value of the town. They envisioned Barkerville not as a decaying relic, but as a living monument to British Columbia's formative years. Their advocacy coincided with a larger provincial initiative, the preparation for British Columbia's centennial in 1958. The government sought a project that would celebrate the province's history and identity, and Barkerville became the ideal candidate. In 1958, it was designated a provincial historic park, launching a careful and comprehensive restoration effort. The goal was ambitious: to revive Barkerville as it had existed in the decades following the Great Fire, approximately between 1869 and 1885. Restoration required meticulous planning. Surviving original buildings were repaired with historical accuracy, while lost structures were replaced using period-appropriate materials and techniques. Craftspeople moved entire buildings from other defunct gold rush settlements to recreate the town streetscape authentically. Rather than creating a sterile museum, the project aimed to capture the vibrancy and function of a real community. Saloon doors still swung, boardwalks remained uneven, and the bustle of commerce and daily life could once again be imagined. By the early 1960s, Barkerville had been reborn, not as a mining hub, but as a living archive of Western Canadian history. It became a place where visitors could walk through the past, experience the rhythms of a gold rush town, and witness the legacy of those who shaped it. This transition from near abandonment to preservation ensured that Barkerville would not merely survive physically, but would also secure its story for future generations. The town that had endured fires, economic collapse, and the slow decay of time had achieved something perhaps even more remarkable than its initial boom. It had become immortal in memory and experience. Today, Barkerville stands as the largest preserved historic town in Western North America, drawing tens of thousands of visitors each year who walk its wooden boardwalks and step directly into the past. Unlike static museums, the town thrives as a living interpretation of life during the Cariboo Gold Rush. Costumed interpreters reenact daily routines, from blacksmithing at the forge to baking bread in period ovens, creating a vivid and immersive experience that transports visitors back to the 1860s and 70s. Modern Barkerville also preserves and celebrates the diverse communities that shaped its history. Exhibits and restored buildings highlight the contributions of the Chinese pioneers, including the Chikongtong building, and tell the stories of the miners, merchants, and families who made the town a hub of activity. In recent years, efforts have been made to integrate the histories of Indigenous peoples, acknowledging their knowledge of the land and their integral role in guiding early prospectors through the interior. The town has also learned from the natural threats that shaped its past. In the summer of 2017, a massive wildfire swept through the surrounding Caribou region. For the first time in over a century, Barkerville faced the danger of fire again. This time, however, modern technology and careful planning protected the town. A comprehensive sprinkler system and preventive measures ensured that the historic wooden structures remained intact, a testament to the lessons learned from previous generations. Barkerville's enduring presence goes beyond tourism. The gold extracted from Williams Creek and surrounding areas helped finance the development of British Columbia and contributed to the colony's eventual entry into the Canadian Confederation. The town's story is intertwined with the economic and political growth of Western Canada, marking it as more than just a relic. It is a symbol of resilience, community, and the shaping of a province. The legacy of Barkerville lies not in gold alone, but in the collective memory of those who lived, worked, and persevered there. The town commemorates the courage of miners, the ingenuity of Chinese settlers, and the endurance of the community earth through adversity. It reminds us that history is not simply a series of events, but a living narrative maintained by those who choose to remember. As visitors wander its streets today, Barkerville continues to teach lessons about survival, adaptation, and the value of preserving the past. Its story embodies the idea that a place can refuse to die, not because of wealth or fame, but because its history resonates so powerfully that generations insist on keeping it alive. Barkerville is not merely a town. It is a living legend, a monument to human determination, and a bridge connecting the present with the extraordinary stories of the past.